This video will contain spoilers for Undead Unluck chapter 215. If you're not caught up, come back later when you have. Okay, so I figured out that the issue with the recording volume was just my system settings itself. No clue how that happened, but yeah, I've gone around and I've messed with it. I don't know if this is still too quiet or if this is somehow too loud now. I've already recorded this video, but had to re-record it because the volume was way too loud. So I'm gonna have to pray that this is the correct volume. If it sounds way too bad, in my opinion, I'll re-record it like I am now. However, if you think this is still a little bit too quiet or a bit too loud, please let me know, because I really want to figure out this stuff out. But anyway, onto the chapter itself. So this was an okay chapter. It wasn't spectacular like last week's, and it isn't an outright terrible chapter or anything like that. It's just a pretty decent chapter. But it's mostly a setup chapter for the next chapter and however many chapters afterwards of what's to come throughout this arc. But before I get too into the specifics of what happened, let's actually get into the recap itself. So the chapter picks up right where 214 left off, with Fuko revealing herself from the mascot costume over to Tatiana. And we get to see the three dummies walking up to see what's going on. That being Tatiana scolding Fuko for breaking mascot etiquette, which, as someone who's done mascot work myself in the past, Tatiana's in the right here. Fuko's just doing a horrendous job here. After that, Tatiana goes to fire her bodyguards, but convinces them to quit because she doesn't want to ruin their reputation and has nothing to do with not wanting to pay them unemployment. And then Tatiana does to Fuko what she's done to so many negators so far, and forcibly gives her a job and kidnaps her. The rest of the chapter mostly takes place inside the span of one day, inside the hotel, as Fuko and Tatiana are walking around, Tatiana going about her daily life, and Fuko talking to the other union members with her about their plan of attack on how to deal with Untouchable and the exact intricacies of what's going to have to be going on there, with the cliffhanger being set however many days later, we're unsure, but we do know the date of October 24th, 2015, with Tatiana heading off to be part of the fashion show and the plan of attack going into action for the union. Okay, so like I said, it wasn't exactly a spectacular chapter. It's not bad. It's just an okay setup chapter for what's to come in the future, which we can't fault for happening. This kind of stuff does need to happen in order for us to know what's to come, know what to expect, and to be able to twist us and surprise us later on. I still do quite enjoy this chapter. It is a decent chapter, and it gives us something that we rarely ever get to see in Undead Unluck that I wish we got to see more of, and that is the intricacies of the discussions and exactly what's having to go into rescuing or capturing these negators and dealing with their negation awakenings. Because honestly, the last time I can think of us having this kind of in-depth discussion meeting was all the way back near the start of the recruitment saga, with them planning on how to deal with Autumn. Since then, we haven't really gone anything this in-depth, and honestly, I'm kind of upset in retrospect, because this right here was so interesting to look at, seeing Fuko and the other union members discuss, like, okay, what's going on here? Untouchable is very dangerous negation, and honestly, it's not one we can exactly stop. It's going to be something along the lines of Nico and Unforgettable, of we can just delay it as best as possible by trying to control the activation requirements. Nico's being a death of a loved one, Tatiana being off surrounded by her loved ones, aka her parents, or just in a crowd inside a building where an untouchable bomb going off is a no-no. And then getting into the more specifics, it's just like, okay, this isn't something tech can handle, so it's going to have to be ability versus ability. What we could use on move, right? And not only is bring up on move amazing, because I brought out of someone being able to deal with Untouchable, but then even Fuko going further, just like, well, yes, that could kind of work. Unmove specifically works on things you can perceive, and Untouchable isn't something perceivable. It's just an invisible force that kind of exists. So while you could use it on her clothes to stop them from blowing up, Untouchable would still leak out. So you'd have to be able to perceive it. So you'd have to figure out a way to make you perceive it, which, as we see in a sort of cutaway bit in between the present where this chapter mostly takes place and the future of where next chapter is going to be taking place, we see Gina kind of messing with some smoke using her Unchange on it, and Chikara practicing his Unmove on it. So it seems to be what their plan is for if Untouchable does activate. Just get her fucking covered in fog and having Chikara use Unmove, not on Untouchable, but on the fog, to create a sort of pseudo barrier shield to help the compression of Untouchable while they evacuate everyone. I fucking love that, because it's such a creative way of having to deal with this near enough literal bomb that Tasuka has placed under the table here. And again, it's like I was asking for last week, of delving more into not being able to stop negations, but being able to delay them, because that is their main goal of trying to be able to delay this as much as possible. They're probably going to be doing some stuff next chapter to make sure people don't get too close to Tatiana to try and lower the chances of Untouchable happening. Will it happen next week? We'll get to that in predictions. But onto the star of the chapter herself, Tatiana. Tatiana here is a side of her that we never really got to saw in the previous loop, and that is a more serious, professional version of her, because here, obviously, from not having Untouchable, she's been able to pursue that career in dressing up and in fashion that she so off the cuff mentioned back in the previous loop of her being upset of not being able to play dress up. Here, she is doing dress up, which what we did learn last chapter was to help with her mum and dad. I still also think that this is something she's doing because she loves fashion, she loves clothes, and getting to see her pursue that, it's not only great, but it's also great to see that it's something out of genuine love and passion. Like, we do see she's got a little bit of a diva side to her with the security guards and throwing them to the side. However, we get to see in the way that she talks about the clothes and wearing them of like, I don't want the clothes to wear me, I need to wear the clothes so I can show off the clothes and see how great they are. We have to share even spotlight. It's a genuine passion for fashion that she has here, and it's great to be able to see that side of her. But we can't exactly talk about Tatiana in this chapter without also talking about Chikara and what is happening there. So, as you probably have, I've seen a lot of people talking about the Chikara Tatiana relationship crush thing that Tasuka is setting up here. And while yes, I do understand a lot of people's concerns, which are like, that's a bit icky, Tasuka. We didn't like it when you set up last loop, not exactly liking it again. I'm not going to say it's outright icky bad yet, because it was the same with Top and Haruka. That was weird and icky. However, Tasuka went out of his way to set it up so it's no longer that, with de-aging Haruka in this loop so that Haruka is now the same age as Top. I do think something like that is going to be happening here with Tatiana. I do think Tatiana is going to be aged around the same as Chikara in this loop. But that fully depends on Tasuka actually giving us a definitive set in stone age for Tatiana. Because for some reason, last loop, Tasuka never fucking did that. So we just had to go with how she acted, which was kind of young and made the last loop Chikara kind of weird. I'm just hoping Tasuka undrakes Chikara here, because if Tasuka doesn't, then that's fucking insane. But yeah, besides that weird stuff, I did very much like Tatiana in this chapter. Like, yes, she did have attitude towards her. However, in the end of the day, this is no more of the professional side of her that we got to see. I think last chapter, that's no more real side we got to see of her. Her just being herself, being a kid, and enjoying her day-to-day life. How we kind of got that in this chapter too, with the scene of her cuddling up to her stuffed animals. Another thing that she said she really wanted to do in the previous loop. So I think that's the more real side of Tatiana, the genuine, kind, caring person that we knew in the last loop. And this is just her having to suck it up, deal with the business that's going on, because she has a job to do. And not only does she have a job to do, but I also have a job to do of not only discussing this, but predicting what's to come next. So let's get onto those predictions. And honestly, the only prediction that's to go on for this is Untouchable. What the fuck is going to happen with it next chapter or the chapter afterwards? Is it going to manifest, or are they going to be successful in delaying it? And if it does manifest, how successful are they going to be in stopping the kaboom? Now, in my full opinion, I don't think they're going to be successful in delaying Untouchable. I do think it's full on going to be manifesting in the next chapter, either as the main thing that happens next chapter, or the cliffhanger as to what happens next chapter and picked up in the chapter afterwards. But just because I think it is going to be manifesting doesn't mean that I think it's going to be going exactly right from the Union. Because while they have got security checkups in place to be able to deal with Untouchable if it manifests, there's still some things that can happen that goes around that. And I think there's a chance that Tasuka might have it go awry. The most blatant and obvious way that it could go awry being the Master Rules. We could have one of them fuckers turn up somehow for some reason out there. However, I don't think it will be a Master Rule coming down, because Andy is still keeping them at bay and there's no new set of quests to forcibly pull them out. Except for Soul. Do I think Soul's going to make an appearance? No, I don't think so. I think Soul is trapped up there alongside the rest of them and can't willingly come down to Earth, because if he could, he would have already. What I do think could happen is Soul could do some soul-based bullshit like he did with Kurudu. Will it be to Tatiana? Will it be to Chikara? Or someone else? Who knows? However, I do think Soul is the most likely candidate for Right Untouchables Awakening Ghost to shit, and they have to deal with that suddenly. He's not the only one people have been discussing messing up this. There's the potential of Ruin turning up and doing Ruin things. And while I think it is the least likely answer, I do think them delaying Untouchable is more likely than Ruin turning up, and I still think Ruin's going to have his main focus spotlight in the future. Who knows? Ruin could just do to Tatiana what he did to Fuko in the last loop, and if he does, I'm gonna be real with you. Next video is gonna open up with me laughing in hysterics because there's no fucking way. However, with Tatiana being the final person to be recruited, according to Fuko, this could be the perfect opportunity to introduce Ruin, with him working under the command of Soul. I mean, we wouldn't have to introduce him as a regular because there's not been anyone going around throwing this game out of whack by just needlessly killing a bunch of Umas. So the only way we could introduce Ruin as an antagonist is to be under the command of Soul, which honestly, it does meld the two ideas perfectly of Soul doing some bullshit and introducing Ruin and setting up Ruin to be a potential antagonist for the next arc or the next saga, as they could be in charge of some other Umas that we haven't seen before, or returning Umas, or hell, maybe some new Negators could be working with Ruin, all under the power of Soul. Either way, no matter which way cut, I do think Untouchable is awakening next chapter. I don't think that's getting delayed in the slightest. Could Ruin turn up? Could it be Soul? Who knows? I do think it's Soul, and that's what I'm going to be putting my money on. But either way, I still did enjoy this chapter. It wasn't a peak phenomenal chapter like last week's was. However, I still think it was a pretty good chapter and did well in setting up for what's to come in the future. Well, let me know what you think. Do you think this was a great chapter? Do you think the Chikara stuff just brought Ray 2 down for you? And what do you think is to happen? Do you think it's going to be Soul, Ruin, or throw something new at me? Who knows? Either way, I can't wait for next week to see what is going to happen, and I'm sure you can't either. So until then, see ya.